So it's really amazing to be here, and thank you for the invitation. Um, I'm so encouraged with what I've heard and very glad that I put some of the stuff on the PowerPoint. So it sounds like we are aligned here in thinking about the next steps. But I'm really encouraged by what's going on in Serbia because and Goran here, Jeras, can correct me. I don't think there's anything of sorts happening in Croatia yet. And I don't know about other regions, but Serbia seems to be on the road to cooperativism, which is really quite amazing. So I'll tell you a little bit. Well, I'm first of all, I left Yugoslavia for, like your mother, to study in Canada, and it was still Yugoslavia when I left. I lived in Croatia, but my father is from Raška, southern Serbia. My mother is from island Kirk, Croatia. And I was studying in Novi Sad, and then I lived in Zagreb and worked in Zagreb at the time when I left for school in Canada. And coming from self-management, I was very interesting to my professors because I had stories to tell about how this actually works. So the whole country is self-managed. How is that possible? So that was my background. And then the country fell apart, and I discovered cooperatives, and it all made sense to me. And that's how it all started. But I work in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is the eastern coast of Canada. And at the moment, actually, I'm moving or have moved to Montreal. So that's where I'm talking to you now. And I spend my summers 2 months in Pula. That's where I'm from. So I will see you in Pula next summer, maybe. But that's where you'll find me. We actually organized some cooperative tours in Croatia. And, so we plan to do more of that. So stay tuned. I might just bring a crowd to you next, because it's sounding like there's things to see. All right, so that said, and I'll be very happy to answer questions if any, of course. So I'll talk to you. I'm still chairing the research committee of the International Cooperative Alliance. And I'm not doing that anymore as of December this year, but I'll tell you a little bit about the Cooperative Alliance because of that, and then a little bit about the International Cooperative Movement. As I said, any questions, we can deal with that later. All right, so the cooperative movement, there's plenty of statistics out there. The World Cooperative Monitor is a good place to look. That's produced by the International Co-op Alliance and Eurixe in Trento, Italy, the institute. It looks at the largest 300 cooperatives in the world, and all the small co-ops are very unhappy about that. But the point of this report has been to showcase that the co-op movement is not marginal, that it actually makes a difference in the world, and that it's really important to know about it, right? So this is why they embarked on the large co-ops, plus, of course, the funding that they get from the large co-ops. But doesn't diminish the numbers that there's at least 12% of people on the planet as cooperators, that 10% of the global workforce works in cooperatives. And again, billions of dollars in revenues that are created in the co-op sector and so on. So you can look up the World Co-op Monitor. It's kind of interesting to see the statistics. Okay, so here is just a little bit about the International Cooperative Alliance and its structure. So it has members from sectoral organizations, and it represents regions. The regions are Africa, Americas, North and South together, and Central, Asia, Pacific, and the Pacific, and Europe, right? So these are the regions where you have your regional offices. So Coops Europe in Belgium are the seat for the European representation. I don't know if the Serbian Union is a member, but I know Croatian was when it was functional. Anyway, so it's Coops Europe where you all are connected, and I'm sure you know that. And then the sectoral are agriculture, ICAO, fisheries, industry and services, these are worker cooperatives, and some social co-ops and some multi-stakeholder co-ops. Health as a sectoral representative, retail and consumers, housing is separate, banking is separate, and insurance is a separate association. So these associations are sectoral associations. They have representation in the ICA, and regions, as I said, have seats. So the ICA is divided into these 4 regions where you connect. There are 4 thematic committees, and there is a youth network of the ICA, International Cooperative Alliance. And the thematic committees are gender, research, that's the one I'm chairing, law, and development. The youth network is becoming a committee now. So I'm putting this up to tell you that the International Cooperative Alliance was established, and again, you probably know that, in 1895, and Serbia was one of the founding members, the 10 countries, right? So Serbia has been there from the get-go, and this region, Balkan region, has been interested in cooperation from the get-go. Some of it, of course, was influenced by Austria and others that came and went, but nevertheless, we've been there for a long time. Another body that I want to mention here is the World Council of Credit Unions, because they have a separate association. So even though ICA has the banking, cooperative banks in its fold, the World Council of Credit Unions was established in 1970, and it is a pretty big body of credit unions around the globe that is doing amazing work in coop development. So that's the international scene. So now to important issues of the international movement. The World Coop Congress is coming up. This is celebrating 125 years, but because of COVID, we missed 2020, and it's happening now. It is going to be in Seoul, Korea, December 1st to 3rd. Before it, we have a research conference. And so the concerns of the cooperative movement is the cooperative identity. The statement on the cooperative identity is defining what Eva presented before we started here. It's defining those values of cooperation and the 7 principles. Those are the general principles, right? The 7 principles of cooperation are general principles. So this cooperative identity, the statement, what is a cooperative, that it's meeting people's needs and aspirations, that it is, not capital driven, but it's people driven. All that stuff is really important to actually be able to say, I am a cooperative and I'm a part of this global movement with some certainty. So this statement on the cooperative identity is also enshrined in the United Nations resolutions. It is in the International Labor Organization's resolution from 2002. It is in laws. I suspect Serbian law now probably has it. Croatian does, right? So the statement on the cooperative identity with its values and principles enters the legal documents as well. So it is very important. The values, I think, are, not that I think, but many people think as well, that's where the crux of the matter is. That's the whole point of cooperation, is in the values. The principles have been, from Rochdale in 1844 to 1932, I believe it was, when they were adapted the first time after Rochdale. Then we had 1965, 30 years later, and then we had 1995, the latest iteration that we are now using. And now this Congress is going to be looking at that statement on the cooperative identity to take a good look at, okay, why should environment be specified and sustainability specified beyond just saying we care for community, which is principle 7. Also a push from the Americans mostly, but I think others agree with them, is to include DEI, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. In the European context, it's not only immigrants coming, but also the Roma population we already heard here mentioned in social co-ops context in the Balkans and so on. So diversity, equity, and inclusion as one of the potential principles might be appearing on site. But anyway, so this is what the Congress is going to be worrying about and making that identity clear. Now, why do we care? Why the identity matters is that this is just the latest, statement from the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2020 that capitalism is changing. It's changing its code, right? The ruho and the features are changing, but the essence, the crux isn't. But the features are changing so that now we are seeing, as I said, Davos is the latest, but there was the US roundtable before it, making a statement that it's not the shareholders and capital owners that matter, but it's really all stakeholders that are impacted by enterprises. And this is to a large extent pushed by the fact that we are in a climate crisis and that we are in the sustainability crisis, and that you have to repurpose the enterprise. So in this repurposing the enterprise, cooperatives that have had a different purpose always are kind of losing, ground in a way, because others are coming, right? And here is what you already mentioned today. So why does identity matter? Well, because there's so much happening out there that you don't know. Do you belong? Don't you belong? What's what? Platform capitalism, the response to it was platform cooperativism, that we'll talk about a bit later as well. Sharing economy, what does that mean? Is that socialism, or is this, or what is it? And where are co-ops in it? Values-based business, what does that mean? And again, poster children for these sorts of conscious capitalism, values-based businesses are corporations, right? And co-ops are not anywhere in sight. B corporations, these are benefit corporations that you may have come across already. They are benefit corporations that really, again, were invented in the United States to counter the C corporation, which is capital corporations that are majority of corporate world, right? So B Corps are certified benefit corporations. You can be either certified or actually incorporate legally as such. So far, I believe it's certification mostly that's penetrated Europe. But in North America, you have both. So you can be a cooperative and also be certified, B Corp certified. But what's the difference, right? Social and solidarity economy, what is that? Again, cooperatives belong to social and solidarity economy, but what do we mean? And this is not just academic. It has policy implications, it has grants implications, it has money implications. And from the European Union in particular, cooperatives are often left out when social enterprises are being financed, right? So you need to really know, are you or aren't you, and what belongs where. So where do co-ops fit in is the question. And I have social enterprise and social business as the last two, with social enterprise in Europe being understood as democratic, so therefore co-ops belong, but it's not everywhere the case. And social business is definitely not what co-ops stand for in terms of their values. So all of this is, again, academic. You don't have to worry about it, but you will worry about it when the money doesn't get to your co-op because you don't belong to a particular bracket. And what else is happening? Why do we need to care about values and cooperation? Because new paradigms are emerging. New things are happening because, as I said, this unsustainable global corporate and capitalist model that we live in now, all of us, right? So these are some of the paradigms that are now being tossed around. And this one in the middle is social and solidarity economy. Social solidarity economy, as I said, contains cooperatives pretty much scattered around it. So that's one where we definitely see the alignment. Circular economy is, again, European Union has a policy promoting circular economy, but this is not about the form of an enterprise. It is about how you actually design the flow of goods and services and resources in the economy. So from linear, you extract, you use, and you toss away, and you produce garbage. It becomes actually, one's production becomes input into another. So this circularity and not producing waste to begin with, right, or minimizing how much waste is produced is the whole point of circularity. Sustainable Development Goals, this 17, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah, up to 17 Sustainable Development Goals you all know about. These are really actually coming in as a useful framework to address and recognize where you actually are making an impact and where you're making a difference. But Sustainable Development Goals have really, since they were introduced in 2015, they're supposed to run out in 2030, but there is big push from the United Nations agencies and, as I said, corporate world to actually address, measure their contribution to Sustainable Development Goals. Up in the corner, the top left is the representation of where the economy needs to function. So this is regenerative economy and redistributive economy idea, where we are supposed to function in the green area, the inner circle being social deprivation areas, so lack of education, lack of access to clean water, lack of a lot of things, right? So social deprivation. And outside of the circle is the area of planetary boundaries. So on climate, on biodiversity loss, we have overshot the planetary boundaries. And this is why this framework is suggesting that we need to regenerate it. So it's not enough to just not pollute or be net zero in terms of carbon emissions, but to actually reclaim some of the planetary boundaries, or regenerate, I should say, right? So plant trees idea in order to actually capture some of the capacity or recapture some of the planetary capacities. And then economy for the common good, Goran can tell us a lot about that one, but it is the concept that came from Austria, and it's just repurposing the economy and saying economy shouldn't be about individual wealth increase, but about common good. And they produced indicators that actually measure adherence, to both creation of human dignity or support for human dignity, solidarity, social justice, environmental sustainability, transparency, and co-determination, which is voice to workers. So worker not self-management, but voice in whatever form, could be self-management. So these are some new ideas about how the economy should work. And again, cooperatives have a very important role to play, or can be inspired by some of these frameworks to actually do better on the things we do already. So let me move it. Okay, so I have my little model here, just quickly. Again, academia here. So we have created this model of the cooperative enterprise, which really just translates the International Cooperative Alliance statement on the cooperative identity. So what is a cooperative? Well, it is in here, built on values, principles. It has a purpose, which is not to increase the value of your capital, but it is a people-centered enterprise, people being planet and people. It is jointly owned and controlled, so it's a collective kind of enterprise, and it's democratically governed. But it lives in its economic surroundings, right? It lives in the society and has impact on society. And it is, of course, embedded in the environment and therefore has an impact on the environment. So what are the key differentiators that are really important in defining what is a cooperative? Well, that there is a democratic governance, and that takes different shapes, of course, but nevertheless, it is democratic. That there is some form of asset lock. What that means is that capital cannot be withdrawn when you shut down the enterprise, right? So you have either collective reserves, indivisible reserves. Italians are well known for that they, by law, have to leave 3% of their surplus in common funds. And this self-finance, in fact, allowed them now to have huge amounts of money for co-op development. So this 3% of your surplus, not net revenue, but not net revenue, but net surplus, they put into these collective funds, and from that you create a lot of money. And then in the Croatian law has asset lock in that when you shut down a cooperative, assets belong to community, so local municipal government, right, takes over, or local community takes over. So you have those kinds of breaks, which is an important. It may seem like the barrier to cooperative creation, but it is really an important element of sustainability and lasting for hundreds of years. And then these user members, so members, people who make decisions, actually are engaged in the enterprise not as investors, but they're engaged in the enterprise, either working there or selling products to it, or using it for other purposes, right? Or buying products from it. So this usership is really critically important. And the collective nature and values. All right, so this is, again, just a quick representation of consumer, producer, worker kind of co-ops, right? So consumers are supposed, the economic models will tell you, consumers buy products from the co-op at a better price. Producers sell products to the co-op and get better price. Workers work in a co-op and they get better income than the market can provide. But that's not all there is to it, right? So there is this other value, which is better or greater than the market. So consumers, through fair trade, through quality products, through all sorts of things, have more value than the price they can exchange at with the co-op. Producers, same thing. They get the price that's sometimes better than market, sometimes it's not. But there is another value, which is voice, which is decision making, which is control over the enterprise. And workers, again, do they make more money if they work in a co-op? Well, sometimes they do, but often they don't. So what is the value to workers? Well, the value is that they actually make decisions over their own working lives. And so this additional value is what's critical in understanding why would you ever be a co-op. And then society and the environment, as I said, these are values and principles of cooperation that actually give you the idea of where this value comes from, where the value is created. And so again, democracy, self-responsibility, you're figuring out your own problems and solving them together with other people. Equity, equality, self-help, and solidarity, all of the values of cooperation really play a role in why you care, usually, right? And then the principles are on the side. So this is just quickly flying through some of the elements of the cooperative enterprise model that our students don't often understand, but also the reality often is divided. And here is your reality. Type 1 cooperatives are the ones whose members have purely economic interests. So they just want better price or to scale up, and they're going to join a co-op for purely economic benefit. So that's one type of co-op. Often agricultural co-ops are like that, but not always at all. The type 2, so these are, of course, there is a spectrum and nuances in between. But the type 2 co-ops are values-based that provide benefits that are driven by social or environmental or both injustices, right? Who want the economy to work differently. So it's a deliberate choice, as Eva has on her t-shirt. I choose co-op, right? So this is what Stefano Zamagni in Bologna talks about as civilizing the economy and wanting to create a different economic system that isn't just about financial benefit. But yeah, finance is critical, of course. It's a tool that you need to have, a resource that you need to have, but that's not why you go with a co-op. So on the side there, what's the purpose of a co-op? Why does a co-op exist? The last question is something we all need to ask ourselves. Why are we a co-op and not some other type of enterprise? And sometimes it's better to be a different kind of enterprise, quite frankly, right? But if you are a co-op, why the hell are you? And then align with the values and stick with it. That's the idea, right? All right, but co-ops often face identity crises. These are some isomorphic pressures, so-called. And the identity crisis comes from either simply finding what others do and then copying it. So, you look for some ideas. How do we pay people? How do we, structure our, salary scale or whatever else? And you just copy what's the best practice out there. So that may push co-op into a different space than where it should go. Then there is regulatory pressure. And again, those in finance know very well what that does. It's really incredibly difficult to have a financial co-op these days, which wasn't the case some decades or centuries ago. But this regulatory pressure is really, really heavy and important, and it pushes co-op into behaviors that maybe is not the best or not aligned with values. There is culture, of course, so culture that's being, that comes from all sorts of places, but this cultural buildup may be pushing cooperative in the direction where it doesn't want to go, and or where it shouldn't go. Competitive market pressures, often you see co-ops trying to meet the competition at the lowest price, which is not the best policy for a co-op. And then professionalization. Often you hear, oh, we need professional lawyers or professional accountants or people who know finance on the boards and in decision-making, boardrooms, and they often push you in the direction you don't want to go. So I'll give you an example. I was on the board of a cooperative school. After it actually stopped being a co-op, it turned into a society because of the legal advice that they could not be a non-profit and a cooperative, which is not true. So it was just that this lawyer didn't know that and gave them the advice that he knew how to give them, which was wrong. So you really can actually even, leave the co-op world if you don't know better. So professionalization can push co-ops in wrong directions. Okay, so here we are now with what is a little bit more relevant, hopefully. New directions. So this is Principle 6 in action, cooperation among co-ops. That is the secret, the secret tool of cooperatives. I have sustainable development goals up on top to say that sustainability and sustainable practices are no longer an option. You have to go there. You got to go there. There's just, we all know that. So how to be sustainable, what to do, how to be innovative in sustainability. Often the answers lie in other co-ops and what you can do with them. And all of you here are here to actually talk to each other and learn from each other, right? At home and across the borders. Circular economy offers so much innovative capacity, especially in spaces of agriculture and food, because your food, restaurants, consumers, surplus that hasn't been used can go to other uses, right? So this circularity with food and agriculture is really important. And so whatever bio surplus that you have, that can go into fertilizers, or it can go into biological fertilizers, or it can go into biofuel, or God knows what. But there is this circularity as absolutely an interesting framework for that space, for that industry. Co-op development incubators. We've heard a little bit. Was it from Dan or was it from Nicola? One of you said it, that you don't have think tanks, right? So co-op development incubators are known in Brazil, but they exist in other places. So this is about startup cooperatives partnering with universities, with non-governmental organizations as well, with local governments who are, if you have a supportive local government, so this is city level, right, municipality level, usually, those are better than national level governments. But it's about creating incubators with universities. So you have engineers, you have computer programmers, you have all kinds of knowledge in universities that are not about co-ops, but you can have an incubator where all that knowledge and expertise could be pulled in, either student projects or, master's PhD thesis, whatever, where they may in fact help with tools to start up a particular co-op. And so, this idea of incubators, where knowledge in a university setting is paired up with government support, hopefully with some funding, and with the sector, is really something that Brazilians have done pretty well. But as I said, there are others. Procurement and social co-ops, partnering with local government again. I didn't hear, and that's the question I have for social co-ops development in Serbia. Are those supported by government? Does part of your revenue come from government funding for social programs, right? And I suspect it does. If it doesn't, it should, at least a bit of it, right? But procurement, procurement in again, universities, schools, government offices, where do they buy their coffee from? Well, they should buy it from a co-op or a social enterprise of some other kind. But so this buying from, there are a lot of things they need to buy, from paper down to, as I said, coffee or whatever else, tables and desks, that can go through buying from the cooperative sector. And then you create the whole viable community of co-op developers. And again, the Preston model is here on the chart as one of those examples where they're actually using worker cooperatives to create more co-ops, and expand co-op development, and they use government procurement. So again, government offices that buy stuff from them. In Cleveland, in the United States, they have a similar model, and they also engage hospitals in you have laundry needs to wash the laundry for a hospital, and that's done by work cooperatives, that sort of thing. And then something that's not explored enough, and that Goran here, who is on the call, is doing in his co-op, which is really fascinating: horizontal cooperation, member to member. What can your members do for each other? How can they support each other? And sometimes it's finance, right? So if you have financial zadruga like Goran's in Croatia, you can actually be the clearinghouse for projects. So that gives you trust in what to finance, right? You can be a clearinghouse and judge whether a project is viable to invest in, and then member to member can support, again, either directly or through something like the call for ethical finance, where member to member support is actually coming to the forefront. But there are other models, of course. What are new directions? There are new cooperative forms, platform cooperatives. There's data cooperatives. There is talk about commons and co-ops, which is collective ownership of resources, right? So you have, open source kind of idea, and the commons can be anything from natural resources to other commonly or collectively owned resources. And energy cooperatives, renewable energy co-ops, all of that can collaborate with each other. You can have a housing co-op that's using energy co-ops, solar panels, that is renting space to co-ops and so on, right? So all kinds of things can live in this space. So there are new types of cooperatives, and here is where I see your cooperative advantage in the Balkan area, right? First, there's cooperative history, from creation of ICA to whatever we're hearing about now, and the first co-op being actually, dating 120 some years. The collectivist culture, there's still that predominantly. Socialist roots, the star there, it means it can be good and bad, right? So the socialist roots, but there is renewed interest in those roots, I think, in this generation of children from the diaspora who actually have heard all the good stuff. And concern for social justice, I think that's very much in the culture. Small farms, small scale, and you need to scale up and add value through cooperatives. So somebody the other day said, this is the big organic farming cooperative in the United States, Organic Valley. They said, we are here to preserve the way of life. So they don't want large farms, right? So they're a cooperative so that they can allow their farmers to stay small, and it's preserving a way of life. That's their purpose, right? So I think that's really telling, and it's really important in the Balkan region as well, because by the nature of it, it's going to be small farming. And in the blue there is, I think, resources that are at the fingertips in Serbia, Croatia, Slovenia, and other parts of the Balkans. Education, it is very strong on tech, engineering, all technical skills and fields, computer science, mathematics, and other sciences. That's very, very strong. And it's an advantage, absolutely. This is where our people do well when they leave the country. So why not use them in the country? And then school and student co-ops, I was very happy to hear that they're on the rise in Serbia, but it's an untapped opportunity, I think. So school and student co-ops, at least in Croatia, from what I know, are just basically allowing students to create products, and then they go and sell them on the market. I don't know to what extent they actually participate in the decision making. I don't know that they actually learn how to govern a co-op. I don't know that they learn how to spin off a co-op. And why aren't tech, computer science, math, and science students creating co-ops to do together whatever it is they're doing already with open source, technology? So this is what is, I think, absolute gold, because other countries don't have anything like it. Canadian children don't hear about a cooperative until they hit university, and if they're lucky, then hear about it, right? So to have school co-ops it's just crazy good. So you should really work with that in the best possible ways. And then diaspora, again, good or bad. Diaspora is great if you can find a way to actually tap into this as a resource. And we've heard already maybe a fund. If that's where we go, I think it's very important to have the clearinghouse so that people in the diaspora can trust that where the money is really going to go. So transparency, clearinghouse, trust is going to be critically important. The danger with diaspora is we've all been away long enough to actually not know what life looks like now in Croatia, Serbia, and other places. So you have to lead that story and take the reins and tell us what you need. Because that's been, the story of my life in socialist Yugoslavia, diaspora at that time had no idea what our life was like, and that we were not a locked-in country. So it's one of those things. We don't really know how this thing works now. So you need to help us understand and ask for support where we give it. And that would be, this one I'm ending up with, I don't know who knows anymore the story of Vlak u snijegu, but there was Ljubanova zadruga. New generation doesn't. Those of you who know Vlak u snijegu, there was the zadruga, učenička zadruga. So I'm saying if Ljuban could do it, we can do it. There you go.
Wow, Sonja, thank you so much for that. There was so much in there that I think will be such good fuel for our conversation. It was a lot, definitely. So I think right now we should probably take a quick break so everyone can think of questions, and then we can reconnect in 5 minutes or so to, I think we can go right into like combination of introductions, questions, and continued conversations. So we have around an hour and a half of just time to talk together and discuss some of these paradigms and priorities, both internationally and locally, that Dan and Nicola told us about. And I'm already seeing lots of really good connections. But yeah, if everyone's okay with maybe just a 5-minute break, we'll come back at, I really don't know what time it is for you, but for me, it would be 10:05 in the morning. 10:10 in the morning. So I think just, yes, 5 minutes.